Hello, friends. Welcome to CFO.com. My name is Amol Dete, and my guest for the CFO Talks is Gaurav Negi, the CFO of IndiGo. Yes, the airline with the blue logo, which many of us use very frequently because IndiGo is the largest passenger airline in the country. With a domestic market share of 57%, it covers 100 plus destinations with more than 1,800 flights per day. So, Gaurav, glad to have you at this show.
Great to be with you, Amol. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Gaurav, when I was going through the details of IndiGo, maybe the balance sheet, the investor presentations, and the website, what really struck me was, 100 plus destinations and, 1,800 flights per day. I mean, how does the leadership team track all these flights? It must be a mammoth task to handle it, right? How do you handle it?
No, you're absolutely right. It definitely is a mammoth task, but the good part is that we've got excellent set of professionals back in the organization who are able to at least track this, which is supported by a very strong digital platform that we also have in the company. And this is something that we built over the last 16 years, now touching 17 now. But over the period of the last 16 years, ever since IndiGo started, we've been able to build this impressive network, if I may use impressive, because it's unparalleled, as we call it, with 78 destinations domestic and 26 destinations international. While these are destinations, you'll be very surprised that there are exponential city pairs also, which cross even 400, which is again tracked on a daily basis. So a good set of professional teams that we have, supported by excellent tools and digital platforms that enable us to track this.
Okay. For sure, I'm sure the digital and the proliferation of the technology has helped a lot of the companies, and the same is with you. Thanks for adding that point. Let me be very specific and ask about some numbers, Gaurav. So in the last 2 quarters, IndiGo has reported, in fact, skyrocketing profit, and the investors have weighted really high on the stocks as well, right? The stocks is just going up. What is driving your growth? And I mean, is it the larger market share that you hold, or in general, there is a increase in the passenger traffic specifically after the pandemic?
I would say it's a combination. I wouldn't still call it skyrocket profits because just a couple of years back, we were in the red. We had the impact of the pandemic. So as a result, the organization went deep into the red. I think this is more a recovery phase that we are currently in. And you're right, we did have a very strong Q3, which was followed by another strong Q4, which was a combination of both demand being strong and the ability for us to deploy capacity, because we had the fleet that was required, which supported the kind of results that you've seen. So both operational performance as well as the demand that we saw, because the post-pandemic era that we were in enabled the outcome in terms of financial performance. But we are still in a recovery mode, I would say.
Okay. But by any chance, if you could share some data points in terms of, because there is always a debate going on in the economy. So how is it for you, or specifically for your airlines? Have we already achieved the large number of passengers compared to pre-COVID era? Because I have been traveling and I have been seeing airports are absolutely crammed.
Yes, if you compare the pre-pandemic, which is somewhere in the 2019 timeframe, we have crossed both in terms of capacity, which is the fleet that we've deployed, as well as the number of passengers that are traveling with us. While the industry at large was still yet to come to that same level, and the same is true for many global airlines also. As far as IndiGo is concerned, we did manage to cross the pre-pandemic levels in Q3 of last year.
So, noted your points, Gaurav. So let me ask something about the capacity utilization, cost efficient, which are a kind of a pillar subjects for the CFO, right? So what I want to ask you is, being a CFO, what are your top focus areas? I mean, is it being cost efficient and profitable, shareholders profit, financing the expansion? What is on your radar right now, more importantly?
So I'll break it down probably into 2 segments. One is value protection. So in terms of, and the second is value creation. So as far as value protection is concerned, making sure from a governance standpoint, from a compliance standpoint, from a internal control standpoint, we, as a CFO, we have the best of governance standards that are there in the organization. When it comes to value creation standpoint, it's the growth that we were talking about. And that growth is what is reflected through execution. So as we kind of plan the path for the coming years, as well as what we've communicated in terms of the growth trajectory that we have for the next 7 years, where we want to double up the size of the company, that is foremost important for a CFO as well as the management team. And that's what we are focused on today. I think the demonstration has already started with the performance that we had in Q3. We have, again, strong Q4. We've given guidance for 2024 in terms of growth of higher than mid-teens. So that's top of the agenda for the management team to keep pursuing the growth, because the demand is very much there from a market standpoint. The opportunity is there. It is for us to capitalize on that, not ignoring the value protection side, because at no point can we slip in terms of the governance side that we need to make sure that we are ahead of.
So Gaurav, in fact, airlines is one of the very toughest business in the world. We have seen many failures, and most of the times even the top airline companies in the world also say that it's not easy for them. So I would like you to tell us, how tough it is for you being a CFO to look at your dashboard far more aggressively in terms of capacity utilization, cost efficiency, because you should be, I'm sure you will be monitoring a penny, right? Every penny, every cent, because thousands of vendors and perhaps thousands of employees and hundreds of, supply management companies must be working with you. So how do you actually deal with all that, Gaurav?
To begin with, it's not a one-man show from a CFO standpoint of all. When you have a set of professionals and a management team that you trust on, I think the task becomes easy. But having said that, airlines is a tough space in terms of generating profits and making money, largely because there are external factors that govern the outcome vis-a-vis whether it's more internal factors. I think we've got a very strong control as far as internal operational factors are concerned. We've got abilities to execute 1,800 daily departures, which the team does it to perfection, I would say, because we've got the highest OTPs that we get. Usually the challenge comes is from the external factors like fuel, which usually airlines are not able to control. It comes from FX volatility. It comes from inflation. So these are factors which are more worrisome because these are less controllable. The ones that are more controllable, we've got a very strong team internally which supports me in managing the show, if I may say so. But the external factors is where the management team sits down together, reads the forecast in terms of what are the trends that are developing, and takes certain decisions. Some decisions go right. There are few decisions that also go wrong. But I think the ability to be agile, to react to changes that are happening in the external environment is what differentiates one airlines versus the others.
Sure. So for IndiGo, is your passenger business bigger than the leasing business? How is it? Could you give some dynamics or for us to understand?
Yeah, from an airline standpoint, we just have one business, which is largely the passenger side, which also has a smaller segment of cargo, and ancillary business. But that's our mainstay in terms of the revenue generations. Okay. The leasing is to lease the aircrafts that are coming in. It doesn't generate any kind of a revenue for us. It's more financing of the aircrafts to then deploy in terms of capacity. But the revenue streams for us is, I would say 95% is largely passenger travel that happens, supported with some amount of cargo business that we also have, and then ancillaries that come along with it.
Right, sure. So have you ordered for maybe new aircrafts, and how many of them? When are you coming? When are they coming?
Yes, we've got a very strong pipeline of an order book. As you would probably know, that we have the highest number of aircrafts in fleet for any Indian airline company. We've got 300 plus, and we've got an order book of close to 500 aircrafts that are supposed to come over the course of the next 7 years. There's a defined schedule that we have on which we will be receiving these aircraft on an ongoing basis. On average, you can see we've already given a guidance that we'll be getting close to 50 aircrafts in the coming year. Those are the ones that are going to enable us to deploy capacity and then support the growth that we're looking at. But there's a phased kind of a schedule that has already been agreed with the OEM manufacturers who provide us these aircrafts. And over the next 7 years, we'll be getting the remainder of the 500 aircrafts.
How has been the financing for these overall aircrafts, and maybe looking for a working capital from the lender side? Is it being easy for an airline company like you? Because we have seen a lot of troubles in the aircraft industry, and the bankers were not very keen on financing all the airlines. But how is it for you, Gaurav?
It's been positive for us, Amol, because since the very beginning, I think Indigo has differentiated itself in terms of building relationships with various lessors, because these are all global lessors who largely provide the financing for aircrafts. And I think the litmus test happened during the phase of pandemic. Despite going through a rough phase from an airline standpoint, we never defaulted on any of our commitments that was there to the lessor. So as a result, we have kept in a different bucket than the airlines that you're mentioning. We've got relationship with probably largely all the global lessors that are there. We deal with close to 50 of them who enable us to get financing for all the aircrafts that keep coming in, which roll in. And as a result, the relationship has been very strong for the last 16 years. And they believe in the brand IndiGo. They've never had a negative experience with IndiGo in terms of defaults or payment delays, etc. And I hope this relationship continues in that regard.
How do you craft your finance strategy, Gaurav? What is going to be your maybe expansion plans and finance strategy going ahead? Considering majority of your aspects are depend on the crude oil, which most of the people don't even know. The fuel prices will go up and down. You do not even know. We will just perhaps the passengers will talk about only the air ticket prices, but at the background there are so many things. Perhaps there will be some another says on the tax. God knows when it will come or it may not come. So how do you, considering all these changes, challenges on the compliance side? I will come back to you a little later. You craft your finance strategy, Gaurav.
Good question, Amol, because that's the most difficult part for any airlines, because the ones that you mentioned in terms of expenses are the ones which are the most volatile and unpredictable in that regard. I think if I break out financing in two dimensions, one is first getting the fleet. So you need to finance the fleet. I think I mentioned about how strongly the relationships are with the various lessor community. So they are able to finance the fleet that is coming in. You've got a set schedule to know when the aircrafts are going to come in. You're able to engage with these lessors upfront to get the fleet into the mix. Given the credit profile that we have, obviously we aim to get the lowest cost in terms of credits for these aircrafts. The second aspect is the fuel aspect, which has played been a little volatile for us. More often than not, a lot of people do not realize that fuel is a very significant part of the cost structure for any airlines. And there's a lot of taxes that are also embedded in that fuel structure, along with obviously the FX impact that comes along with it. Our effort has been to work in ensuring that we are working with the Ministry of Civil Aviation to try to reduce the tax structures that are there. I think we've had some good success because Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, along with some states, have kind of yielded to the request that we've put forward. And as a result, there's been some reduction in the fuel cost. But the external global volatility continues to remain. What we intend to do with that is to make sure our operations are the most efficient, meaning we've got the best of aircrafts that we've kind of bought into our family. If you'll see, we've got the latest technology Neo, which are 15% more efficient in fuel versus the older technology, which used to be the CO. That also kind of hedges us in terms of the fuel cost, because when you have an efficient fleet, you're using less amount of fuel. So that enables a kind of a positive outcome economically. Then in terms of operations also, you fly the aircraft. Our pilots are trained to fly the aircraft in the most fuel efficient manner. We've kind of adopted certain practices where you have single engine taxiings, you're using ground power instead of APU power. So various measures. And along with that, you may have recently heard, we are trying to reduce the weight on the planes also, where some of the paperwork that used to be carried by our pilot colleagues used to be of a significant amount. We've introduced electronic flight folders, which then reduce the weight of the aircraft, which then makes it even more efficient in terms of from a fuel standpoint. So fuel is also being addressed in that light. But the reality is every time you will see volatility in fuel, it necessarily then starts reflecting in the pricing also. Then there are various other measures that we've also taken in terms of operations. So in terms of, we've got a single fleet of Airbus. As a result, maintenance cost is also being managed. So all these measures has enabled IndiGo to be probably one of the cost leaders, not only in India, but globally when it comes to cost per ASK basis also. So these are measures that we constantly keep an eye on. We keep checks. We are always looking for areas of improvement and driving productivity, which will help. at least the bottom line and then the economic results that we are able to announce.
Sometime back when you mentioned that over the next 5 to 7 years you will have maybe another 500 aircrafts coming to your fleet. What kind of expansion plans, maybe new routes, new destinations that you're planning? If I ask you specifically, what is on there your expansion dashboard specifically for the business in next 2 to 3 years, Gaurav?
I think if I break down where we are today, we are largely domestic. We're probably close to 75 domestic and 25 international. Right. I think our penetration in the domestic market is unparalleled. We reach practically every possible nook and corner of India, and we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to connect India in that regard over the last 16 years. We're shifting a little bit of our focus towards now international also, because if you'll see, all airlines from India put together a very small pie when it comes to international departures. And that is one space that we intend to kind of start focusing on and shift, because we've already expanded to 26 destinations. In the next coming year, we are looking for expanding another, between domestic and international, we are going to be expanding another 15 stations, which is again a sizable jump from where we are today. 104, we'll be adding another between 10 to 15 new destinations. A disproportionate share of that will be on the international side. New routes that we've already announced are Nairobi. We are looking at Jakarta as potential options that we can go to. We'll be looking at going to CIS countries also. But there are certain limitations that we have as we wait for a larger kind of aircraft, which is the XLR. But to overcome that, we've already started to expand our kind of geographic reach through code share arrangements also. One of the arrangements that we have is with Turkish Airways also. We have a code share through which we have already reaching Istanbul from Delhi and Mumbai, and then further on to 33 plus, and that number will keep growing, European countries and cities that we are touching. So that expansion is happening in the form of direct reaches as well as through code share arrangements, which is in a way kind of spreading the IndiGo brand now in a much wider geography than just in India, or for that matter, Middle East and Southeast Asia. Now it's expanding out even now to European parts of the geographies, which again is a significant feat. And you'll probably keep hearing more and more in this domain from us in the future also. But in the immediate 12-month period, we're looking for at least 10 to 15 new stations, both domestic and international.
Sounds really good, Gaurav, and all the best on that front. We have been tracking, aviation as a sector. So in last maybe almost if you look at a time span of 10 years, 2 airlines failed miserably. One airline just somehow managed to survive, or still struggling with a lot of other issues. And everyone is trying to kind of help them. That is one. On the other side, there is another airline which is trying to grow really big. I'm talking about Air India, Vistara, and AirAsia. They're trying to merge with each other and trying to become really big. How is the overall airline sector or the aviation sector right now, Gaurav, according to you? Is it going through a challenging time, or is it going through a emerging time that perhaps the best will come out very soon? The consolidation will happen. How do you see the whole ecosystem of the aviation sector right now?
I think I'll go with the latter, because I think there's enough and more opportunities that are now available in this particular sector. And there are many reasons to it, and I'll start breaking it down. In terms of airlines penetration, if you start with airlines penetration, if you compare it to any developing or even developed countries to some extent, India's lagging behind. In terms of per seat, per capita penetration is very, very low. So the opportunity set itself is very big and huge for airlines to grow in the country. I think over the last few years, the kind of investment that even the government has started to do with investments in various airports is again a very positive. So this is at a larger aviation space I'm talking about, not just the airline. So there are massive expansions that are happening, both in the form of new airports that are coming in, although be small, but even secondary airports now coming in larger cities. So there's expansion of infrastructure, which will again enable aviation. Then comes, in order to now kind of support the connectivity, you need capacity, and you need size and scale of airlines to be able to have large orders being placed, which has happened with IndiGo, because as we've gone, we've kind of placed large orders and have been able to bring capacity to support the growth that we saw. Similar things will start happening with the competing airlines that are also kind of announcing those orders. I think the overall ecosystem around aviation is currently positive. The demand also post-pandemic, especially with the people's propensity to spend, has also seen a favorable kind of a play for the aviation space to thrive in that environment. While the bottom line continues to be a little challenging for many, but the impact in terms of the yields growth is also favorable in that regard. So outlook looks very, very positive. I think there's enough and more for every airlines, whether the ones that are small, whether the ones that are consolidating. And for us also, in terms of opportunity set, demand is significantly available. The only thing that one needs to keep in mind is stick to a certain discipline, make sure that you are conscious of what the cost structures are. You do not kind of stray away from certain disciplines of how you want to run an aircraft, because many examples are there where probably that discipline went missing. As a result, some of the airlines had to probably, unfortunately, go through the phase that they have gone through. But on the whole, I think the environment is positive, opportunity set is huge, the demand is there. The overall, I think the propensity for people to spend, especially with the middle class growing. So every macro factors will probably support that the aviation will probably have a good time as far as the next decade is concerned, provided you stick to your disciplines.
Yeah, certainly. I'm with you. I think the outlook is positive, no doubt about it. Do you see a situation where perhaps short routes will not be as profitable as they are today because the infrastructure is underway? A lot of routes are being getting done, and perhaps if you look at the example, Mumbai to Pune, perhaps people will prefer to go by a road to Pune from Mumbai, or maybe Chandigarh from Delhi, than going by a flight. So do you see that as one of the issue going ahead, and maybe you will choose a longer routes and focus more on the longer routes? How do you see that?
I think it will be a combination, honestly speaking. I know there's improvement that is happening in road infrastructure. I know there's improvement happening in rail also. Aviation is there because, again, there are many new stations or airports that are coming in, which is going to be in close proximity. I think there's going to be opportunity set for all, because there's got to be a trade-off between safety, comfort, as well as time factors that are there. Because if it's going to be in the strike zone, which is fairly close to each other, probably road is going to be a competition to air. If it's in the strike zone of, say, up to 500 kilometers, probably railways could be a competition to air. Long distances, as you just mentioned, is probably air takes away. But I think there'll be enough demand available for all to thrive, which is again a reflection of what you see in some of the kind of advanced countries also. Not so much in the extreme West, but in many places there are equal thriving elements of all three of them, is what I would say.
Being a CFO, you have been handling this segment since really long. I understand you also worked with G earlier for a long time. So every model, every role has been changing a lot with the technology. The regulators have been also very active, coming with different rules, maybe compliance and risks, mitigations, specifically for CFOs after GST, the CSR. ESG is a new, new ball game now. How has the whole compliance regime changed for the CFOs, and how challenging it is for you to deal with all this, risks and compliance issues on a daily basis, Gaurav?
You just need to be abreast to begin with. First, you need to be abreast with what are the changes that are happening. I think the more important thing is, because while these regulations have happened, I think they're positive in that regard. Most regulations that you will see, they're all positive. Usually the challenge comes is the execution time, because you need a reaction time to get to a state of compliance or a comfort level. So I think usually the speed at which they come is the challenging part. I think staying abreast is something that a CFO constantly needs to do, whether it's GST, whether it's CSR, whether it's sustainability, whether it's tax-related changes that keep happening even on the direct side also. So I think the challenge remains more in terms of making sure the ability to implement those regulatory changes versus why these changes are happening, because I think these are all positive to a large extent, both for the industry and I would say even for the company, so as to speak. I think COVID was a kind of a breather that it gave to many CFOs in that regard. because earlier than that, there were many changes that were happening, whether it's IndiGos, GST, and implementing with the team is where it helps. Otherwise, it's a busy life for a CFO. There's no area per se or no boundary per se that we have. It's all boundaryless for us.
I think I'm done with my questions, but let me take one soft question with you, and that's my last question. So being a airlines, CFO of an airline company, what is the biggest challenge for you, Gaurav? Is it offering a cashback or booking tickets for your friends at the last minute? Is that the biggest challenge, or hedging the risk for the fuel and making the company profitable is the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge is when someone calls and says, "Can you please delay the flight because I'm stuck in a traffic." And but the obvious answer is we've got OTP. It's not one individual that kind of supports you. So, but it's more you have the tickets, you have the discounts, but at one out of requests at times does come that can you please delay the flight also. But obviously it's never entertained. So it's a clear message that at any cost the OTP is a critical metrics for us, and such kind of requests are not going to be entertained.
Yeah, I'm sure, obviously, and that's what will differentiate you from the others. Thank you so much, Gaurav, for sharing meaningful thoughts here and being part of CFO Talks. Thank you so much.